I'm your host, Taylor McWaters. Here are the top 10 most wanted criminals in history that will make your skin crawl. Kicking off our list at number 10, vending machine killer. Okay, right off the hop, we have to know that apparently there are a lot of vending machines in Japan. Like it's something around 1 for every 23 people. So yeah, that's a lot of snacks. So in 1985 in Hiroshima, there were 12 people who passed away and 35 people who were seriously injured from being poisoned with a chemical herbicide. Now, when the string of poisonings were investigated, authorities realized that they had one thing in common, and that was the fact that they all had the same drink shortly before falling ill. So around the time of this entire ordeal, there was a company that had launched a marketing campaign where they gave a free drink with every purchase made from, you guessed it, a vending machine. One of the many vending machines in Japan. So when people didn't want their free drink, they would just leave it on top of the vending machine for the next person who came along, which is super nice and thoughtful instead of throwing it in the garbage. But on the other hand, there's some people who are not nice or thoughtful and rather horrible. And it turns out someone was taking these drinks and lacing them with poison and then leaving them back on top of the machines for some random stranger to come around, drink it, and then be sick or pass away, like those numbers that I mentioned earlier. It's almost impossible for authorities to be able to track down whoever was doing this because, well, you have to narrow down where the person picked up the drink, and that's pretty impossible seeing as in 1985 there weren't nearly as many CCTV cameras as there are today, or vending machines apparently for that matter. So unfortunately, whoever was responsible for a mass poisoning of strangers is still out there somewhere. Number 9, Jacek Jaworek. Now, this is a man who was on the run because of horrible crimes that he committed in July of last year, so a little more recent than the 80s. He took the lives of 3 people who were a part of his own family. One of the family members was able to escape this horrific nightmare and was able to make it safely to the neighbor's house where they could call the authorities for help. But since these horrific crimes took place, he has gone missing and no one is sure of his whereabouts. Right now, it's speculated that he likely escaped from Poland where the crimes took place, but his exact whereabouts still remain quite the mystery. He could be literally anywhere, which is terrifying. Number 8, John Pyle. This human is a pile of garbage. This horrible human is not an undercover spy or an insane fraudster. He's just a monster who committed certain specific crimes that are unfortunately a little more common than any of us would like to know. Because of the nature of his crimes, I can't really talk about them here in this video because let's just say they're that brutal. But let's just say that he's definitely one of the worst kind of criminals out there. On June 24th, 2016, authorities searched his home after receiving 3 tips relating to these crimes. Now, the amount of and the severity of the incriminating evidence that they found during said search, he was charged with 30 different second-degree felonies alone off just that one search, which could bring a sentence of 450 years in prison. Now, he was arrested the same day, but he posted a bail bond of $90,000 as well as surrendering his passport. Now, fast forward to 16 months, October 23rd, 2017, and of course this guy does not show up for his hearing. And thus we have a fugitive now on the run. Number 7. The Beer Man. He took the lives of at least 6 people in Mumbai, India between October 2006 and January of 2007. It's not a lot of time at all. That's a lot of people in a very short amount of time. The reason this unidentified monster is called the Beer Man, such an odd nickname, is due to one fact about each crime scene, which ended up being how they linked these crimes together in the first place. This was the presence of beer bottles that were found scattered next to each of the bodies that were found. Now, of course, it's been over a decade since the crimes were committed, so it's definitely upsetting that this person has yet to have been caught, obviously. But it's been a while, so maybe they're naturally gone. Know what I'm saying? Number 6, the Honolulu Killer. This is another one of those horrible, horrifying, unidentified serial killers who was active in and around Honolulu, Hawaii. Now, these crimes took place in 1985 and 1986, and throughout those years, it's said that whoever is responsible for these crimes took the lives of at least 5 women. These women seemingly didn't have any connection to each other as they were all from different walks of life, but because of the gruesome similarities between each of them, authorities were able to determine that they were likely committed by the same horrible person. Despite the years that it's been, the perpetrator has never been identified and could still be out there somewhere hiding from taking responsibility for their actions. Number 5, the Doodler, another stupid nickname for another horrible unidentified killer. He received his nickname due to the fact that he would sketch his victims before taking their lives. Yeah, how sinister is that? You see that on TikTok, but this is like the evil, horrible version of that. This unidentified killer committed their crimes in the San Francisco area from January 1974 to September 1975, and they specifically targeted the gay community. It's believed that 14 deaths can be attributed to this killer, while 3 others were injured in the process. Unfortunately, because of the stigma and the sensitivity surrounding gay men at the time, the 3 who survived this monster's attacks were very reluctant when speaking to authorities for fear of being outed as a result of it. This, of course, has led to there being very little information for them to work with in terms of, actually identifying the person responsible. But for a while, there was a primary suspect, but that person has never been officially charged because sadly, none of the survivors felt comfortable enough to testify in court. There's also a very real chance that authorities know who the killer is, but just don't have the evidence to prove it in the court of law, which is also a terrifying thought. Number 4. The I-70. This unidentified killer is known to have taken the lives of 6 store clerks in the Midwest back in the spring of 1992. The reason he is referred to as the I-70 killer is because most of the stores were just a few miles off Interstate 70, I-70. While most of his victims were women, there was one man, but it's believed that he may have been expecting a female employee at the time, and that's the only difference there. The killings were clearly the main objective of his crimes as well, considering the fact that each scene there was only a small amount of cash that was actually taken. Aside from these initial 6 crimes, it's thought that he also might be responsible for the deaths of 3 more store clerks in Texas back in 1993 and 1994, as well as 1 more in Indiana in 2001. Number 3. Jason Derek Brown. This piece of work has been missing ever since November 2004. That's quite a long time, but that doesn't mean authorities have given up just yet. Jason fled from Phoenix, Arizona in the year after he allegedly took the life of an armored car guard who was just outside of a movie theater. Now, after committing this already horrific crime, he then took the money and then ran, just to make things even worse. On the FBI website, where it details his crimes as well as other details about him and who to contact with any information, all that good stuff, it gives a little bio on Jason, and it says that he enjoys being the center of attention and that he clearly likes showing off his luxurious lifestyle. Yeah, it's crazy how many of these people are known for trying to flaunt their stolen lifestyle. Another thing the website reminds us is that he should be considered armed and dangerous at all times. Number 2, the River City Ripper. One of the most terrifying things that exists are, of course, serial killers who are still on the loose, especially when you find out that they've been recently active, right? That's the horrible new news that we don't want to hear. Now, this serial killer is wanted in connection to 4 different incidents that occurred in Little Rock, Arkansas, and 3 of which were fatal. These horrific crimes took place between August of 2020 and April of 2021, and despite one of the victims thankfully surviving the attack and being able to provide a description of the assailant, there's still, of course, very little to go on in terms of actually being able to identify this horrible human being. The FBI was contacted shortly after the survivor was able to give a testimony to authorities, and their behavioral analysis team created a profile of this unidentified killer. So there's work being done, although there's little evidence, there's still some momentum. And finally, number 1, Pedro Lopez. Pedro Lopez had a very difficult life growing up, and unfortunately this led to him living a life committing a plethora of horrible crimes throughout South America during the 1970s. Now, by the time the 80s had rolled around, he had made a mistake during one of these awful crimes, and this led to his arrest. Now, once in police custody, he spilled everything on basically his entire life and confessed at that point to an insane amount of crimes. Just confessed to everything and just unloaded. Like, we're talking confessing to 240 killings on top of the 110 that they already suspected him of doing. Police were a little skeptical of just how many crimes he said he committed, but Pedro was able to lead them to a mass grave where they recovered a total of 53 people's remains. So at that point, they're like, yeah, we believe you, this is horrible. Pedro, of course, went to jail, but get this, he was somehow released in 1994, which is absolutely insane. That's why I had to put him on number 1 here. He was sent to some sort of mental institution for 3 years, but he was also released from there for good behavior. That's horrible. See you next time on Bumblebee. Bye.